A single missed step during a bathroom renovation cost one family nearly $60,000, and they didn't find out until the ceiling below their kitchen started sagging under the weight of water they never knew was there. By the time anyone noticed, the damage had already been spreading in silence for almost a year, hidden behind drywall that looked completely normal from the outside. If you're someone who owns a home, or plans to one day, subscribe now, because every week we dig into the hidden construction failures that quietly destroy houses from the inside out, and the warning signs almost nobody catches in time. It started with something so small that nobody thought twice about it: a slow drip under a bathroom sink. The kind of thing most people wipe up with a towel and forget about within minutes. There was no puddle on the floor, no stain on the ceiling, no smell, just a faint dampness that came and went, easy to dismiss as condensation from a hot shower. But here's where everything changed. That drip wasn't coming from a loose faucet handle or a worn-out washer, the kind of simple fix that takes 10 minutes and a wrench. It was coming from a connection deep inside the wall, a joint between two pipes that had never been properly sealed when the house was renovated years earlier. And because it was hidden behind tile and drywall, nobody could see it happening. Picture the wall the way a plumber would see it if he could look straight through the surface. Behind the smooth white tile, there's a maze of copper and plastic piping, running vertically up toward the second floor, then branching off toward the sink, the shower, and the toilet. Every one of those connections is a potential failure point, and when a connection is even slightly off, even by a fraction of an inch of misalignment, gravity does the rest of the work over months and sometimes years. Most homeowners never notice this, but plumbing systems are built on trust. Trust that every joint was tightened correctly. Trust that every pipe was cut at the right angle. Trust that whoever installed it understood exactly how water pressure behaves inside a closed system. When that trust is broken during installation, even slightly, the system doesn't fail immediately. It fails slowly, in the dark, where nobody's watching. In this particular house, the mistake had been made 3 years earlier, during what the homeowners thought was a simple upgrade. They'd hired someone to replace an old cast iron pipe with modern PVC, a common and usually straightforward job. The problem wasn't the material. Plastic piping is reliable and widely used across the country. The problem was how the new pipe was connected to the old plumbing system. When two different types of pipe meet, they need what's called a transition fitting, a special connector designed to join dissimilar materials safely. Skip that step or use the wrong type of glue, and the joint might hold for a while. It might even pass a quick visual inspection. But under constant water pressure, day after day, that weak connection slowly starts to give. This hidden detail changes everything about how we understand plumbing failures. It's rarely one dramatic event that destroys a home. It's usually a slow, invisible process, water finding the tiniest gap and exploiting it relentlessly, 24 hours a day, every single day, for months or years, without anyone knowing. By the time that faint dampness appeared under the bathroom sink, the leak had likely already been active for a long time. Water doesn't just disappear when it escapes a pipe. It travels. It follows gravity down through wall cavities, along floor joists, pooling wherever it finds resistance. In this house, it had been quietly saturating the insulation between the bathroom floor and the kitchen ceiling below. Now comes the part that costs homeowners the most money. Wet insulation doesn't dry out on its own inside an enclosed wall or ceiling cavity. There's no airflow back there, no sunlight, no ventilation. It just stays damp day after day, creating the perfect environment for something far worse than a water stain. Mold doesn't need much to get started. Moisture, a food source like wood or drywall paper, and darkness are enough. Inside that ceiling cavity, all three conditions were present for months. What began as a tiny leak had quietly transformed into a hidden ecosystem of decay, spreading further with every passing week, completely invisible from either the bathroom above or the kitchen below. Picture the cross-section of that ceiling the way an inspector would eventually see it. On the surface, painted drywall, smooth and unremarkable. But behind it, the paper backing has gone soft and discolored, clinging weakly to insulation that's turned dark and matted. The wooden joists supporting the floor above have started to absorb moisture too, and wood that stays wet long enough doesn't just rot, it loses its structural strength, fiber by fiber, silently. At first, it doesn't seem like a serious problem. A little sag in the ceiling, maybe some yellowing near a light fixture. Most people assume it's just an old paint job or normal settling. That assumption is exactly what allows small plumbing failures to become massive structural disasters, because nobody investigates until the damage becomes impossible to ignore. What happened next surprised even experienced contractors when they finally opened up the ceiling. The moisture hadn't stayed contained to one small area. It had traveled along the joists, following the path of least resistance, spreading nearly 6 feet from the original leak point. An entire section of ceiling had been silently compromised, and none of it was visible from below until the drywall finally began to bow downward under its own saturated weight. This is where the real cost of a hidden leak becomes clear. What could have been a simple repair, resealing one pipe joint for a few $100s, had become something entirely different. The insulation needed to be completely removed and replaced. The affected drywall had to be cut out and disposed of properly, since materials contaminated with mold require careful handling. The wooden joists needed to be inspected for structural integrity, and in this case, 2 of them showed enough decay that they required sistering, a repair process where a new piece of lumber is bolted alongside the damaged one to restore strength. But the biggest mistake hadn't even happened yet, because once the physical damage was addressed, there was still the question of exposure. Mold spores don't stay neatly contained to one room. Once disturbed, they travel through the air, settling on surfaces throughout the house. And in homes with forced air heating or cooling systems, they can spread through the ductwork into nearly every room. What started as a plumbing mistake had become an air quality issue affecting the entire household. This is why professional plumbers and contractors approach every water leak with a level of urgency that might seem excessive to an untrained eye. They understand something most homeowners don't fully appreciate until it's too late. Water damage is rarely about the water itself. It's about time. The longer water sits somewhere it shouldn't be, the more expensive and complicated the consequences become. Compare this to how a properly installed plumbing transition looks and behaves. When a licensed plumber joins dissimilar pipes, they use the correct transition fitting, rated for both materials. Apply the appropriate primer and cement designed specifically for that connection, and allow proper curing time before the system is ever pressurized again. It's not glamorous work. Nobody photographs a well-sealed pipe joint for social media, but it's the difference between a plumbing system that lasts decades without incident and one that silently fails within a few years. There's one critical mistake almost nobody notices when hiring for plumbing work, and it's not really about skill. It's about verification. Many homeowners assume that if a job looks finished, it was done correctly. But plumbing is one of those areas of home construction where the most important parts are, by design, meant to be hidden inside walls and floors. That means the only real way to know a job was done right is either watching it happen or having it inspected before the walls go back up. Professional contractors call this the rough-in inspection stage, and it exists for exactly this reason. Before drywall covers up any plumbing work, a qualified inspector, or at minimum a second experienced set of eyes, checks every connection, every joint, every transition fitting, while it's still accessible. Skip this stage, and you're essentially trusting that everything behind the wall was done perfectly, with no way to verify it until something eventually goes wrong. In the case of this particular home, no such inspection had taken place. The renovation had been treated as a cosmetic upgrade rather than a structural plumbing change, and the homeowners, understandably, had no idea that a seemingly simple pipe replacement carried this level of risk if done incorrectly. Once the repair work finally began, the difference between the original installation and the corrected one was obvious even to someone with no construction background. The failed joint, once exposed, showed clear signs of stress, a faint white mineral buildup where water had been slowly seeping for an extended period, invisible from the outside, but unmistakable once opened up. Beside it, the newly installed connection looked completely different, clean, properly primed, secured with the correct fitting, and pressure tested before the wall was ever closed again. This is the moment that reveals something important about how homes actually fail. It's almost never one dramatic event. It's an accumulation of small decisions, a skipped step here, a rushed connection there, each one seemingly insignificant on its own, but together creating the conditions for a slow-motion disaster that can take years to fully reveal itself. There's a broader lesson hidden inside this story, one that applies far beyond this single bathroom and kitchen. Plumbing systems are engineered to handle constant pressure, temperature changes, and years of continuous use, but only when every component is installed to the standard it was designed for. A single weak point doesn't just risk that one connection. It puts the entire system and everything around it at risk. For homeowners watching this and wondering how to protect themselves, the answer isn't complicated, even if it's rarely followed. Anytime plumbing work is being done in your home, especially work that will be hidden behind walls or under floors, ask whether a rough-in inspection will happen before everything gets closed up. If you're doing renovation work, consider photographing the plumbing before it disappears behind drywall, so you have a record of exactly what's there if problems ever arise later. And perhaps most importantly, take any unexplained dampness, discoloration, or unusual moisture seriously immediately, rather than assuming it will resolve itself. Small, consistent monitoring is far cheaper than emergency repair. A yearly check under sinks, around toilets, and near any visible plumbing can catch a slow leak long before it has the chance to travel through insulation and compromise structural wood. It takes minutes. The alternative, as this family discovered, can take months of repair work and tens of thousands of dollars to fully resolve. By the time the repair crew finished this particular job, the family's kitchen ceiling had been completely rebuilt, new insulation installed, damaged joists reinforced, and the entire plumbing connection redone to proper standards. The bathroom above looked exactly the same as it always had. That's what makes hidden plumbing failures so unsettling. From the surface, everything appears completely normal, right up until the moment it isn't. What makes this story worth remembering isn't just the dollar amount, though the cost was significant. It's the reminder that some of the most expensive disasters in a home start as the smallest, quietest problems, the kind that are easy to overlook, precisely because they don't announce themselves. A drip that seems minor, a stain that seems old, a slight sag that seems like nothing. Each one is a signal, and learning to take those signals seriously is often the only thing standing between a simple fix and a full reconstruction. If this kind of hidden construction failure fascinates you as much as it fascinates us, stick around, because there are dozens of similar stories still waiting to be uncovered, each one revealing a different way that small mistakes behind the walls of American homes turn into massive, costly consequences down the road.